Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Before we jump into the show, I just want to thank my sponsors and collaborators. 3D Network Technology, reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And Genetech, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit Genetech, that's GENETEC.com for more information. We'd also like to thank the Change Execution Group and 360 Life Transformations. Visit www.360lifetransformations.com. We'd also like to thank Canadian Security Magazine and Omnigo Software. And now, let's get into today's show. Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast. I'm joined today by Adrian Starks. Adrian, thanks for joining us today.
Brian, it's a pleasure to be here on your show, and I'm excited for this conversation. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have the conversation as well, and I'm glad we were able to make this happen.
Yes.
Now, I'll start off with the loaded question I like to ask everybody at the beginning.
Okay.
Who is Adrian Starks?
Who is Adrian Starks? Oh, man. Adrian Starks is a stubborn, tenacious guy who doesn't like dealing with unexpected changes, which is why I talk about it a lot, because when you I'm also a guy, I'm a visionary, a thought leader, and I really am passionate about the process of becoming a better person in leadership, a better person in personal life, and how to look at that from a perspective of change. I've always been very inspired by people who want to leave a better mark on this planet and leave a better mark with people who are in their circle. So I truly believe that I have been brought here, I am here, to really make a lasting impact on people across the planet. So that's who Adrian is.
All right. Now, with everything that you're doing today, I know your past experience prior to the work that you do now was focused on, it was in the healthcare environment.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you make that transition from, what you were doing there? And, if you would mind sharing what you were doing there, that would be great. But how did that lead to what you're doing now?
Oh, that's a great question, Brian. So let's go back a little bit. So I graduated with a degree in exercise physiology from the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington. And from that point on, I wanted to get into the field of physical therapy. Well, we all know when you get out of college, sometimes things don't happen the way you planned them to. So I found myself looking around and seeing what I could do in my field. And I got involved with a biomechanical facility where we tested injuries on athletes, people who are in accidents that happen at work or in a car. And our objective was to help them strengthen those areas. So I learned a lot about stress and change management and challenges within that environment. Worked there for about a couple of years. And then from that point on, I went into personal training, where I worked for about 10 years as a personal trainer. And I took a lot of my philosophy from what I learned from the biomechanics into the field of helping people become better from the inside out. From that point on, the recession happened. And we all know what happened to people during the recession, Brian. We were scurrying around trying to find work. So my clients just told me, hey, you know what? I love you, Adrian, but this is a luxury. And I have other priorities. And I totally got that. And I understood that. So after the recession happened, I had to dial back and look at what I really needed to do for myself. So with my degree, I said, okay, what can I do? I'm a great communicator and I know how to work with people and I know how to lead. So I got into the medical field where I worked at the Children's Hospital in Seattle in the call center. So for me to sit in front of two monitor screens in a cubicle was quite challenging, but I did that for 8 years. And I worked in one of the most stressful units, that is the orthopedics department, the trauma unit. And it was there where things began to develop for me. I learned a lot about the process of mindset and how to deal with ongoing stresses in the environment. We would come in and all of a sudden a clinic could be canceled, a clinic that has over 40 people. And it's not the doctor's fault. It's not anyone else's fault. It's just something comes up, where they're required to be somewhere else and we have to move people around. Sometimes People need to be rescheduled. Sometimes they need to come in the day of to be double booked. So all these things were going on in a day's time. So I was in charge of 4 people on my team, and I had to be the person that really looked at things from a different perspective. I've always been optimistic, but optimism doesn't really help in times of chaos. Because people say, that's great. We're smiling, but hey, this is not good, man. We need to figure out how we're going to deal with this. So I had to get practical. But what I realized over time, Brian, was that in that environment, I was becoming exhausted, frustrated, agitated. I was gaining weight. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't getting much sleep. And I was blaming the environment, blaming the doctors and nurses for that stress. And I realized that it wasn't them. That environment was the way it was because it's a hospital. It's you're dealing with these needs. The problem was me. I had to learn how to deal with the stresses. And this is how I began to look at changes and challenges within the environment. So I went back to work again. I went back to becoming a student again. I looked back at all the things I was doing before in the past and how could I implement that into the call center from a leadership perspective. So I started going to personal development workshops, psychology workshops. I drove from Seattle to Vancouver monthly to learn from people. And it was quite the journey. But through that journey, I really developed a new sense of how to look at challenges within an environment. When I brought that experience back to the call center, I had one of the lowest turnover rates ever. And for the orthopedics department, that's a big thing because people come in for about 6 months and then they're out because it's not an easy environment because, you have parents that will call in and, if you're a parent listening to this, you can understand how this may feel. You don't ever want to call the hospital. That's not your priority. That's not a thing that you're looking forward to doing. So dealing with that on the phone continuously was very hard for people and they didn't want to stay there very long. So I had to create an environment where they wanted to stay. So I had to teach them how to deal with changes and challenges, and more importantly, how to know who was around me, understand them, and to treat them as equals. I think a lot of leaders don't do this. They look at it as like, I'm the leader, you do what I say. And last time I checked, generals were not on the hill telling their men, go do a good job, keep going. They were in the midst of the battle with them, which is why their men went to war for them. So I take that analogy with me when I'm going into war or going into battle with the people I work with.
Awesome. So you talk about the change management process, and you gave a very specific example there of a clinic being canceled and you having to let sometimes 40 patients know that their appointment that they may have been waiting for a long time isn't happening. What is the change management process that you go through in when it's an unexpected change like this?
Well, from years of doing this research, I have 3 steps, but they're not as simple as they seem. But I will explain them today. If someone listening, like, oh, I could do that. Easier said than done, which is why I teach this, is why I have workshops on this. But the first step is acceptance. And I know it sounds simple, but here's the thing. Simplicity is a way to life. And I don't want to reinvent the wheel for you. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to add a little W40 to it so they can run a bit smoother for you because everybody's wheels turn differently. So you have to accept the fact that you have a problem. I believe it was Howard Thurman. He was a great mentor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he said that there's a point in our lives we all have to sit ourselves down and have a personal self-confrontation. We have to accept our facts. As a leader, you have to accept the fact that if you have a problem, it doesn't matter where the problem came from or who started it. You've got a problem. And as a leader, it's our job to get that problem resolved sooner than later. What we often get caught up with is the symptoms to the problem. What's coming after the problem, what's happening next, the emotions involved. And I believe that we have to accept first the responsibility that we have a problem. And so how do we go about resolving it? And a lot of times that means we have to put our egos aside and take sometimes the hit for it. There are many times in my team I took the hit for it. A call would come through if an appointment was if it was canceled accidentally, if it was misscheduled, if it was double booked in the wrong spot. Oh, I still have flashbacks from that one. Oh man, I got lit up so much on the phone. And it's just because when you're looking at from the nurses and doctors' perspective, that's their day. It throws off their whole day if something gets scheduled the wrong way. And then it makes the clinic not look so good because the families are relying on consistency and on all the things that come with it. So I had to start taking that hit and saying, well, I'm sorry that the appointment was double booked. Well, who did it? You know what, right now, let me just take care of it. We can talk about it a little bit later. Well, that should never happen. And I'm like, I understand. So I had to grit my teeth a lot. But did I go to the person and yell at them because I got yelled at? No, I went to them and said, look, this happened. And do you know how it happened? And they said, well, I don't know. I said, well, okay, well, I took care of it. But when this happens, this is what comes after that. This is the effect. And it really helps the clinic if we can just not do these particular things. So next time, just make sure that if you do this. So I gave them specific steps, but I never undermined people. So that was my first step of acceptance. And it helped my team to accept if they made a mistake, because they knew if they accepted that and said, yes, I made the mistake, they wouldn't be punished for it. And this is where it gets really interesting, because people don't want to accept things because they don't want to be punished. They don't want to be called out. And when I broke that particular foundation and I said, you know what, on my team, we're all a team. If one person makes a mistake, we all make the mistake. And it took me a while to get that in their heads. So I had to take the hit first a couple of times so they could say, okay, this guy, he's in the war with us, so we'll go to war for him. See, that general mentality. So that's the first step, is acceptance. If you're listening today, you're probably thinking, well, I'm a leader. I shouldn't be accepting other people's problems. Well, that's the key part of being a leader. You have to take the hit sometimes. And as a leader, we have to go straight to the problem, not the symptoms. We have to look at the problem from a different perspective and change our mindset toward it. If you look at the word challenge, inside the word challenge is the word change. And I talk a lot about this. Challenges are a call for us to change our perceptions on a problem. In that call center, I learned how to look at problems differently. I was empathetic, but I still had the ability to not take it personal. I knew I needed to do something that was going to work, right? So with that being said, I had to accept it. So the second step is addressing it. Now once you accept the problem, now you have to address it. What do I mean by that? Now we go into action. We have to start finding resources. What do we need right now? What can we use? Who can help us? Do we have reference points? What small step can we take? Not trying to get rid of the problem, but what can we do to start to minimize that problem piece by piece? Chunk it down. And then once you address the problem, you move into the third step, embracing. So we go from accepting, addressing, and now we have to embrace. And the embrace is the hardest part. What I find that most people do is they get to the embracing part, they back off. Because embracing, self-doubt kicks in. Resentment kicks in. Like, why should I have to be going through this? Why do I need to be doing this? This is ridiculous. And then you're putting all that energy into the wrong place. And it's like Henry Ford, the airplane takes off against the wind, not with it. So the embracing part is where you're going to hover above that problem, but you've got to go through the turbulence of the negativity that comes with it. As a leader, you may make a decision. Your team may not like it. They may be looking at you in the background, rolling their eyes. You can hear them talking about you like, I know they didn't. You have to kind of forget about that and just say, hey, I have a job to do here. And my job is to make sure that I am serving this facility as a leader. And a lot of times you got to embrace what that negativity may be coming after the accepting and addressing part.
Excellent. And the one thing when you were talking about acceptance there, and you gave the specific example of, taking the hit for a teammate and then talking to them afterwards and really explaining the impact of that mistake, really helping them understand. I guess it seems like you're really helping them understand the why behind what they do and how it affects the overall organization and department.
Yes, Brian, it's so important for them to understand the why. When you have people working with you, they come from all walks of life. So they're bringing in with them different experiences, different ways of seeing things. And it's important to constantly remind them why they are there. When I was at the call center, in the beginning, my team, I had people that were like, well, I'm just here because I want to make a paycheck. Well, I'm here because I just want to be here for a few months. I'm going to move on. And I said, okay, if that's the case, then you know what? That's good to know. I said, but your performance is not going to be as good because you're looking for a way out before you even develop a way in. And so I had to show them that this is a stepping stone. What you do here is going to build what you do next because it's credibility. If you're going to do this in one spot, trust me, you're going to do it again in another spot. I had so many people that would move on, they take that attitude with them, and they had the same result in the other place. And I get calls back saying, hey, this person, I said, you know, I said, it's something that they have to change in their mindset, right? You just can't leave a place and be like, oh, everything's going to be fine and great for me. You have to change how you feel. So it's important to let your team members or remind them of the why what they're doing, but more importantly, inspire them, give them reason to show, to be seen why it's important to know the why. Give them a picture of what they're doing. With my team, we were in the call center. They couldn't see the faces of the families. So they didn't really know what they were doing, the impact. So I created a system where each person, each week, I had one person a week that would be able to go to the hospital, to work from the hospital, to see the families, to see what happens. I even had a chance to connect with the doctors and nurses and say, is there a way that we can get families to come to us so we can see who we're scheduling? And so we figured out a system to make that work, and then people realized their why.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a really, yeah, there's probably not a better way to do that than just put them right in that environment and really make them understand and really see the impact of what they're
Yes,
doing. Like it's one thing for you to tell them, but then I guess by going there, they're actually really seeing it in real life.
absolutely. Yeah.
Now, is there anything else about this process? Like we talk about the acceptance, addressing, and embracing. And like you said, when you really summarize it like that, it makes it seem really easy. But what do you think is what do you think is the biggest challenge that people have to, kind of come process in their mind to be successful in following this change management model?
That they're not in control all the time. That it's not going to be the way they always think it's going to be. That's the biggest challenge. And a lot of times, often the way you don't want it to be is the way it needs to be. It's not about you, it's about the process. And that's what I had to learn very quickly. Even when my ego got involved, I had to dial back and just ask myself, is this coming from a state of me wanting this all to myself, or is it coming from a state of I need to help the organization? So when I started thinking from an organizational standpoint, I knew then that it was better to think that way. So I helped my team began to transition to that thought process too. But yes, the biggest challenge people have, Brian, is the unwillingness to allow things to flow in those kind of environments, because we're always trying to protect ourselves because our jobs are at stake, right?
Right.
Paychecks at stake, right? The reputation's at stake. And people joke about this, but I'm always about being real. When people walk into work, they're like, you're not about to throw me under a rug or throw me under a bus. People have that mentality.
Yeah.
Or they're like, you're not going to do that to me. And so there's this brick wall that goes up, and we start operating from that. And as leaders, we have to be very careful and not try to overprotect what we have as a position. Our job is to guide. It's not to force, it's not to pull, it's to guide, to find a way to create an all-star team, is what I say. You want a team that they're better off without you. You can call in and their team, they're still going. There are many days if I was not feeling well, if I had something I needed to do at the hospital, I would call in to my team. Oh, Adrian, we got this. We're good, man. Why are you calling us? I'm just checking to make sure you got. No, we're good. All right, we got work to do. Bye. And they hang up the phone. I was getting in their way, see? And you want to have that energy where when you're out of there as a leader, because as a leader, you're required to do other things. So when you're out of that position to do other things, you want your team to feel inspired to be by themselves because it's their chance to shine. And that's the environment you want. You want to create not a competitive environment, but a creative environment.
Right now, and I guess there's a lot that goes into that. So, with that frame of mind, when you want to create that creative environment, like you put it, how does that impact your recruiting?
It impacts it greatly because when we're recruiting, I look at first what is the why? Like I want to know why they're there.
Yeah.
What's the purpose? Because if you're there just to make a quick buck, and people won't tell you this, but you get good at the point where you can read people. You can see if they're really inspired to be there, if they really want it. When I first got on, I really wanted it. I was like, no one's taking this position from me. This is mine. I'll be here all day. But that's the kind of drive you want. You want people that come in, they have this zest, they have this, we call it fire of desire, right? You can see it in their eyes. They don't have to be charismatic or over the top, but you just know that they want to give, with leadership when you're recruiting, it's important that you find people or you look for people who are highly interested in what you're doing. They should know the purpose behind your organization, the mission behind it, because they've done the research. When I started recruiting people, I started looking at what they knew about the organization as a whole, because then it showed me that they cared enough. It wasn't just coming in to work, they actually knew what they were getting into. So over time, I began to narrow down my focus of who was going to be on our team. And that's how I created less turnover. I actually had people that wanted to be there. They were highly interested in working in the hospital, but they knew that things were stepping stones. So in order to get into the hospital, to work directly with doctors and nurses, or to do things, sometimes you have to go from another tier. And a lot of times that was the call center. And so they understood that, but they also knew that the call center was a wonderful way to be able to build that credibility. Because I even told them, I said, hey, this is more than just a call center. This is a medical call center. You are the front door. You are the first voice families hear when they call. You are a representation of the hospital. I said, you have to represent. And I had a different way I talked with each of my members because I understood their personalities. Mm-hmm. So some I kept it very professional. And some I was like, you got to go get it. You're going to be the person. When you open that door, I said, imagine if I come to your house and I knock on your door. How you open that door and answer it is going to determine whether I know I'm at the right house or not. That's the same way it happens when you're in a call center. Somebody calls, the way you answer the phone, the way you deal with them shows them that they're in the right house and they're welcomed. Because when you do that, they walk in and they have less of a resistance. Then the providers, the nurses, the higher echelons of command will have an easier time with them because the trust has been built. So I designed this system that our job in the call center is much more important than you think. So as leaders, it's important to let your team know how important it is what they're doing. They're not just doing a job. They're doing something that helps build the organization. And it has to be, explained that way from time to time.
Right now, it seems like you had a lot of success, obviously, in the role that you were in, and you became quite adept at building strong teams. What was it that prompted you to kind of go out on your own and leave something that you were doing where you were having so much success already?
That's a great question. I was there for 8 years, and sometimes you can outgrow an environment. Not saying that you're better than anybody or that the environment is, sometimes we just serve our purpose in an environment and we're done. And we know that, and we can feel it in our bones. And I realized that the last 2 years of being at that call center, I had outgrown it. And there were a couple things that happened in my life that made me question too of what I wanted to do next. I knew I was good at what I was doing, but I knew importantly I was good at communication. I was good at inspiring. I was good at helping teams. But I didn't want to sit in a cubicle. I didn't want to do all these things. I wanted to do something different. And I had to question and be my own change maker. I had to go through that 3-step process. I had to accept the fact that I'm here. What do I need to do? I had to address the problem. That was me, my attitude. I realized I had lost inspiration. I wanted to do something different. I had to embrace that question of, oh my goodness, if I leave this place, will I have these benefits? Will this happen for me? I had to embrace all those things, but I had to step to the plate and just say, what do I want? And what I really wanted was to be a person that goes out here and helps people be their own change makers. I wanted to go out here and help people build themselves from the inside out. And I wanted to do it in a way of what I've learned through physiology, through mindset, through change management. I wanted to combine all those together. And that's when I started my journey. My last 2 years in a call center were actually my best 2 years because I developed what we call an exit strategy. And for those of you guys that are listening, don't just quit a place unless it's an environment where you feel like you just don't want to be there and it's giving you a headache every time you walk in. But if you realize that you want to move on to something, develop an exit strategy. start researching, looking at what would you like to do, where would you like to go. And what will happen to you is you'll get more inspired about being there because you know you're going somewhere different. And then your workload picks up, your productivity picks up, your creativity picks up, and they're thinking, wow, you're doing great. We want to promote you. And you're like, well, promotion wasn't something I really wanted. So in actuality, the last 2 years I got promoted, and I was like, okay, I'll take that for now. But I was really good about communicating with my upper leaders that at some point I'm going to be leaving. And see, this is the important thing too, is that communication is key. To this day, I still have a great relationship with those leaders. And actually, next year I'll be going there to help teach the teams that they have to speak on change management because I've been there and done that. But I only can do that because I kept a good relationship with them. I didn't just leave and say, bye. I made sure that when I left, that place was running nicely. I made sure that when I left, the people around me knew that I was leaving because I just wanted to leave. There was no bad blood. There was no burning of bridges. There was none of that. And I think that as leaders, it's important for us to have that same mentality, to keep that, instill that integrity into your teams, to not just have people work with you, but have people that are around you that they carry the same or similar values that you have. And that's when I began to realize that I had something special to work with and I wanted to take it out there into the world.
All right. So can we talk a little bit more about what you do today? Just so everyone can really understand the impact that you make.
Yes. So today I speak with teams and organizations. I speak with students in schools about change, about the process of how to be your own change maker in life and how to deal with challenges, how to move through the challenges to create your own opportunities. And I show people how to get out of the stuck position. If you're right here, this is how you're going to get out. This is how you're going to be productive. I'm not a person who's going to talk about rah-rah motivation. I don't do that. I am a reality person. Life will kick your butt at times. People will kick your butt. Environments will kick your butt. And you have to step to the plate and realize what can you do to respond, not react, but respond to that. And I teach a lot about the responsibility of choices, decision making in business and leadership and relationships, and what happens when we operate from a state of courage that allows us to make better decisions. So that's what I do now, and I've been doing for a little while. I enjoy doing it. I teach workshops currently on communication when it comes to speaking, public speaking, because if you're going to be a leader or anywhere, you need to know how to properly present yourself in front of people. Even in interviews, how to be a good interviewer, right? How to say the things you need to say, with the fewest amount of words. I find that that's important to do in the line of any field. So that's what I do currently right now. And I'm the Chief Communications Officer of Connect Now Business Network. And so within that network, I teach leaders the same things that I was talking to you today about. I'm teaching leaders to go out there and to do these things with the people and the markets that they feel passionate about.
Awesome stuff. Now, we covered a number of topics, in the last little bit during this discussion. Is there anything I haven't asked you yet that you'd like to discuss?
Brian, you actually have asked some amazing questions, and I'm trying to think if there's anything that maybe you didn't ask me about my favorite color. I think that was probably a big problem there. No, I'm just kidding, man. No, you've asked some amazing questions, and I love this interview. It's been a great time.
Thanks. Now, I want to give you a chance to talk about anything that you're working on that we can look forward to. So what can we look forward to from you in the months to come?
Looking forward to a book. I got a book that's coming out the next month, and this book is going to be a great one. It's basically, once again, I didn't want to get into the whole motivational thing because there's so many books on motivation. They're out there by the plethora, and it's just like, which one do you choose?
Yeah.
But I wanted people to know, who is Adrian Starks? Back to that question you asked me earlier. Who is Adrian Starks? And this book reveals a lot about who I am through a lot of my interests when it comes to philosophy, poetry, and all these writings are mine. Performances I've done in Seattle. People don't know that I was a spoken word artist. That's how I started out in the field of public speaking. I was doing spoken word around Seattle, and I knew then I had something going on with that. So I'm taking that and putting it into the book. Ideas, reflections, experiences. I was also a tap dancer in my day. So I take a lot of the tap dancing analogies, of how to communicate with yourself, how to know what your body is saying. I use this when it comes to body language. So there's so many elements to me that I put into this book that I want people to see that as a human being, you can be very diverse. And you don't have to just be just this one way street person, but you do need to know where you're going. But you can also have multiple things that captivate you, that allow you to express yourself. So that book is coming out, and that book's going to be a great one. I won't reveal the title just yet. Well, I'll go ahead and reveal the title. It's called Untold Courage. And that book's about, living a life of courage. There's a lot of us, we have courage that we are living every day, and we don't tell ourselves about it. You're quite the courageous person, and you're doing all kinds of things, small things that add up. And if you don't remind yourself of how courageous you are, then you're missing out on so much more you can be creating out here in your environments. Man, I'm also working on courses within the Connect Now Business Network. It's cnbn.ca. And we got courses coming up in the future, courses on actually podcasting, courses on public speaking, courses on communication. So that's all coming to the Connect Now Business Network, which I do a lot of my teaching within. I have presentations coming up in the summer that I'm doing, talks. And this is something I wanted to share with you too, Brian, is that I was a guy literally 5 years ago that was in a call center on the 9th floor on Olive Way in downtown Seattle, overlooking I-5, seeing cars go north, seeing cars go south, asking myself, when can I get out of here? When can I get my chance? And I'm here to tell people that things can change when we do. We can't change the whole world, but we can surely change our world. And it starts first with having a vision. And you have to ask yourself this important question: why do you want to do this? You don't have to do like I did and get out of work and go into, entrepreneurship. Maybe it's going into a higher level of command in your job. Maybe it's switching locations. Maybe it's doing something a little bit more challenging for you. And what I can encourage all of you is that when you're listening to this, find a way to become better where you are so that you can expand. And then you have the choice to decide where you want to go. I got out of that call center not because I just ran out, I expanded. I gave myself the ability to do good where I was with what I had, but I also gave myself the ability to build on what I wanted. And that is how things happen. Success is a journey. It's not an end result that's called achievement. Success is a journey. It's a process. It's every single day that you're doing something. It's a success. Right now, you can be very successful. I used to think when I was younger that when I get to the end result, then I'll be successful. I realized that that's not the case. Success is an action. It's an action. If you are active in your field, wherever you are, and you're bringing it every day, you're impacting lives, you're helping, you're getting through the challenging moments, even when it's hard to do it, you're successful, my friends. You're very successful. And everybody's success is different. So wherever you are in leadership, just remember this: being a leader, it's hard. But at the same time, there's so much that you can build with being a leader. So just remember that you may have a bad or not so good day, but you're still successful because you are there, you're putting in the work, and you're making things happen.
Thank you for sharing that, Adrian. Now, do you have a special message to share with the Healthcare Security Cast community?
Yes, the message I have to share is that to always have empathy for the people around you, to really think about the people that surround you, that you're leading and guiding, that you're working with. They all have different lives. And from time to time, those lives are going to come into your workplace. And if you are able to understand that at the end of the day, we're all humans and we're all here to do a job together. There's going to be some clashes, there's going to be some tension, but the most important thing is that you're working together. That is going to really put you into a place of productivity and creativity. And sometimes you can get lost in the whirlwind of things, but to realize that you're all important, you all play a valuable role. And at any point in time, your role can get bigger and bigger, but it's all about the energy you bring to it. When you walk into wherever facility, any organization, people will notice the energy people, the people who make things happen. They will gravitate toward that. And in the community, realize that the healthcare community right now is the most important community because you are the ones that are allowing us to move beyond this pandemic. And I want you all to know that you're highly appreciated. And even when you think that you don't matter, because you can be a person in a big organization of people, you do matter. One of the lessons I learned was that no matter where we are in the field of the medical care field, any field, you have a place. The biggest struggle that I had when I worked at the call center was building the bridge between the call center and the actual hospital because there was a disconnect. It was like, well, we're in the hospital, you're in the call center. And I made it very clear, look, yes, we're in the call center, but we're still a part of this organization. We need you, you need us. And so for everyone in this field, you all need each other and you all play a valuable role. So I want you to go into your workplace tomorrow, next week, on fire. And realize that no one can do your position better than you because if they could, you wouldn't be in that position.
That's a great message. Now, what is the best way for us to connect with you, Adrian?
The best way to connect with me is if you would like for me to come to speak to your teams and organizations. I'm doing virtual presentations because it is COVID still. So I am online all the time. I'm doing virtual presentations. Feel free to send me an email and we can talk about how we can make that happen. It's speaking@bookadrianstarks.com. Once again, speaking@bookadrianstarks.com. If you want to learn more about what I am doing within the Connect Now Business Network, you can go to cnbn.ca. And you'll find a little bit more about the network in general and what we do and how we help people, organizations, and teams. And that's how you can reach out to me. Those two, the speaking@bookadrianstarks.com and cnbn.ca.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time today, Adrian. I appreciate it, and I look forward to having you back on.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. It's been a wonderful time. I look forward to being back on.
The Healthcare Security Cast is available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music and Audible, and many other platforms as well. Check out our link tree on your computer or mobile device. And this can be found at linktree/Brian Hamilton. That's linktr.ee/Brian, BRINE Hamilton. Again, that's linktr.ee/Brian Hamilton. Or if it's easier, send me a text at 647-372-2042. That's 647-372-2042. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have or share any links you may be looking for. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, take care and stay safe.